The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Welcome to the program on a Friday. I'm just lucky that I can speak because there's 8 feet of snow in Knoxville right up to my chin. And I'm just trying to be able to communicate. There's not a darn bit of snow. There was supposed to be like 12 inches earlier this week, 3 inches yesterday, and there's no snow in Knoxville if you're watching this program, which is live at 10 a.m. Maybe later in the day you're watching it and you're like, there's snow. But no, not right now. There's snow. But we do know that Caleb still needs a throat lozenge.
Sorry, that one came out on me I got better and then I got sick again. Guys, kids in daycare, I am learning. You get everything.
Oh, yeah. I had my mom was a teacher, too. That makes it worse because she brings it home. I had strep literally every year until I had my adenoids and tonsils and all that stuff moved out. All right. So, wow. Carson Beck has entered the transfer portal. What the H? Also, the college football playoff game, Notre Dame and Penn State. I think Tennessee could beat both of those teams. And, man, that was brutal football to watch. This day in Tennessee sports history, I know it ended well. Tennessee basketball to face Texas in a battle of the UTs. Will West from the Sports Animal will join us while the Vols are struggling in the transfer portal. And we're going to grade Nico Iamaleava. And we're going to break him down by 4 separate categories. Let's call it a quad semester or quarters, I guess is what they used to call it. So we're going to break it down by September, October, November playoffs. And we're ultimately going to come up with a grade because I was asked this on a Nashville radio station. Where should Nico rank? What would you grade him? And Caleb, we're not going to do so on a curve. I mean, this is a guy who had been around for a year. It's not as if he were thrown into the action. He knew that he was going to be ready to play. And I've got some information that I'll share with you based off sources that he was not ready to play this last year. So I've made some phone calls on that. I'll share that with you. But let's just say that Tennessee's offense, to some extent, was limited by Nico Iamaleava. He carries some of the blame. And I've been the guy that said offensive tackles, they undermining. I know I've been that guy, but based off who I spoke to yesterday, I think that's a little too simplistic. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
Amazing, Dave. Just amazing. How about you?
Never better. All right, here we go. It's today's tough question. And the big news yesterday was Mike Keith named the voice of the Vols, and congratulations to him. Congratulations to the Vol Network for landing a fantastic, unbelievably good hire. As we get rolling here, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. It is banksandjones.com, and they bring you today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, here's what I can tell you based off people I've talked to. Pat Ryan was the color commentator last year. Now, Pat and Mike have worked together, and they were the first play-by-play team, I think, for the Titans before Pat said something about a foreign kicker, and that didn't go over well. I don't think it's going to be Pat, based off who I've talked to, that he's not very fond of it, that now some of that may be who he was working with. I'm just going to be honest with you. There were times I heard the Vol Network broadcast, and I wondered if the guys got along. So I don't know that it's not going to be Pat, but I don't know that I don't think that's the direction they will go. So I will ask you, who should be Tennessee's color commentator? They've had some great ones, Bill Anderson, Tim Priest. Tim was my favorite. Bill was probably a little bit before my time. I mean, I heard a lot of Bill in the 90s, but I really liked Tim Priest. I liked his excitement, and I liked a lot about what he did. But let's throw out some names. And I'm going to throw out the first one. And I'm going to go young because I think you would want somebody like we have Ollie Lane on. We have Jacob Warren on, as opposed to guys who played in previous regimes, because they give you a little insight into Josh Heupel in this program. I don't expect Mike Stoll, for instance, who I love and breaks down the balls with the best of them. I don't expect him to know what's going on with Josh Heupel. I don't know if this is a full-time position. I see the Vol network expanding, and if they want to generate revenue with somebody and make a splash hire, I think they'll be able to do that. Trust me, you can generate revenue on the internet. Caleb, any names come to mind? Because I'm going to throw one out there right now. Jacob Warren. That is who I would hire for Tennessee's color commentator. Well-spoken. Might be the most well-spoken athlete I've ever covered at Tennessee. At least he's right up at the top. Knows Heupel. Wants a job. He's going to be in the whatever it's called, the UFL or whatever that is. I talked to him yesterday. Football's probably not going to be his final destination. I'm saying Jacob Warren. Am I crazy?
No, I don't mind Jacob Warren at all. I would say I think he would be great, honestly.
Did I surprise you with that one?
No, you did kind of surprise me, but I mean, Jacob Warren would be really good doing it. I was thinking of like, could you do this? They've never done this before. Like Monday Night Football. What if they had two color commentators? Like one that gave you the measure, like, you know, this is what's happened, X's and O's, this is what they need to do. And then one that threw in the entertainment. You know what I mean?
It sounds like you're trying to do that thing that they did on Monday Night Football with Dennis Miller. I don't want to.
I still say they should do it. I mean, like, heck, I don't care that he doesn't talk football. Get Ron Slay. He didn't play football, but get him to do the color comment. The other
come on, Caleb. That's
John Henderson or Al Wilson. Just somebody that's fiery that would just drop hilarious knowledge and like.
Al wouldn't be good. John Henderson wouldn't be good. He wouldn't be comfortable. I mean, come on, you got to come with something stronger than that.
I'm just saying, okay, like back in the day, because you told me the stories, how epic would Doug Atkins have been as a color commentator?
Oh, well, you couldn't have aired what he said. I mean, he liked to use the N word and the GD word and the F word. And I mean, like I told you, I interviewed him for 40 minutes and it took me 3 hours to edit it. So you couldn't do that. If you're looking for somebody outlandish and fun, you're running a risk of losing some credibility. Give me some real names out there. I mean, Doug Atkins is dead.
We've had him on a few times too. Another guy. What about Billy Ratliff?
I like Billy a lot. I think that you don't have a tie to Heupel, and if you're comparing him to Jacob, my suggestion is I think that Jacob is incredibly well spoken. Not to say Billy isn't. I mean, to me, that would not be even a comparison.
And I want to say this up front. I'm not discounting Jacob. I'm just trying to find some other names.
Well, I want you to have more names. I thought you would have more names.
And also, message board. Totally forgot this. Yeah, Ramon Foster. Ramon Foster would be really good too.
Ooh,
as a color commentator for this.
Now that's really good. And more times than not, I will take guys in the trenches or a quarterback. Mm-hmm. I mean, skill position players really don't do a lot for me. I'm trying to think really off the top of my head. Is there a defensive player that's a really standout color commentator anywhere? Is there a receiver that's a color commentator?
Well,
anywhere?
I mean, like Bill Anderson did play both sides of the ball. He was more of a tight end in the NFL, I know, but like he was an end at Tennessee. So technically he was a defensive player.
Well, the game's, I mean, that's the game's changed so much. You're just looking for somebody that can talk.
I mean, I'm just saying the reason
is willing to do it for like $150 because that's the reason back then.
The reason the level of outlandish kind of helps. Let's be honest. Let's talk basketball for a minute. Burt Bertelkamp's outlandishness has been one of the best parts of the Bob and Burt broadcast for Tennessee. Can we agree on that? Over the past 25 years.
Yeah, I can take that. I'll roll with that.
And one of the most underrated missed parts of the recent years, I know he doesn't do it anymore, but Tim Priest got a little outlandish at times in a good way because Tim Priest couldn't hide his disdain for certain coaches when he was.
I think, listen, I will tell you, I think that Tim Priest would be fantastic. And Tim, who I've talked to, I mean, he got a little bit, it's hard if you're a former player. I mean, you can do, if you're Mike Keith, I mean, he's a pro, so is Bob Kessling, and so is John Ward. So you don't want to be a homer, and weren't not going to be homers. However, it's hard for a former player to see their team struggle and not have some sort of visceral reaction that, hey, this stinks. Tim Priest, to me, and Burt Bertelkamp are the two that I think were the most perfect in that you definitely knew that they were Tennessee fans, but at the same time, I thought they were incredibly objective. So let's go to the message board and get some comments. Who would you like to see as Tennessee's next color commentator? I got another name for you, and he did sideline for the Vol Network, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the guy, Mike Stoll. Give me some names here, Caleb. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Okay, unless you give me a better one, I've got my 4. So this is your one opportunity. We're going to start this as a poll question. Some fantastic votes on there. David says Josh Ward. I think even Josh Ward would tell you that he's not qualified to be a color commentator. Neither am I, given the fact that we didn't play football. So who you got? Because I got 4 good ones, and you're not exactly bringing your A game this morning. I guess it's all the snow.
What are you talking about? I've named some great ones.
You haven't given me a good one.
You said Ramon Foster was a good one.
Okay, I'll give you that. Give me another one. I got some good ones on the message board. I think somebody said Dave Matthews. I think you mean Doug Matthews. Jason Swain, Tennessee receiver, who is doing sideline and could slide into that role. I think do you think Charles Davis would do it, by the way, or is Charles Davis making more money doing what he does now? Ooh. All right. Charles Davis is on there, who, by the way, answers the phone every time when you call him with, "Hello, this is Charles." He always sounds so happy. He does. All right. I'm going to put Charles Davis on there. So you push somebody on there, but we're pushing Ramon Foster out because I've got better names. Jonathan Crompton, Mike Stoll. Now, Mike Stoll's staying on there. You could talk me out of Jonathan Crompton. Let me throw Eric Ainge at you. By the way, you guys are doing a fantastic job of providing some names on the message. We're doing way better than you. Are you doing? I would take Ramon over Jonathan Crompton just because Ramon's so tied into the program right now already. It's a smooth transition, and he's really talented. Well, yeah, and here's the other thing I think you would be concerned about since things didn't go well for Jonathan at Tennessee. Would he have a subconscious axe to grind, right? Yeah, that's a possibility too. Would it be like, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but if Tennessee beats Alabama by 3, would somebody disgruntled, not necessarily Jonathan, would somebody disgruntled say, "Oh, well, they only won by 3. They should have won by 20." Which you should never say when you beat Alabama. But that would be, if I'm the Vol Network, that's my concern. I know Jonathan and the Crompton family and love them. So I don't think that would be a problem. But if I'm stepping into this as the Vol Network and hiring someone, that would be my concern. Because all but the last, 6 weeks of his Tennessee career, things did not go well for Jonathan, which included death threats, his family harassed, a lot of lies from the coaches that I don't really want to get into right now. But he was completely mistreated and mishandled, and there was a coaching change. And I don't know that he would want to do it. And by the way, he is a high school coach at Tuscola, where he went to high school. He's the head coach there. So I don't know that he would want to do it. But Mike Stoll, Charles Davis. Who else we got?
Mike Stoll, Charles Davis
on there.
Jason Swain. You're not putting Jacob Warren on there?
Jacob is on there. I'm going to leave Jacob. I'm going to leave Jason off. And I don't mean this in a mean way. I think you want somebody, if they're going to talk that much, a little bit smoother.
Well, one thing I will say on behalf, though, is that, and this is the truth, and this is where the Jonathan Crompton thing may not work out, too. Jonathan Crompton would be good at what we do because we objectively cover Tennessee. Yes. Guys, remember, what the Vol Network people are hired to do is not what we do. They are hired to cheerlead for Tennessee. They are hired to spin everything positive for Tennessee, no matter what. Okay, so no matter. That's why, by the way, that's why Tim Priest was so awesome, because Tim Priest couldn't hide the fact that he would call out when Butch Jones made a stupid decision in the game half the time.
I still remember bumping into Tim Priest after one of the first 3 or 4 Butch Jones games. And they had just squeaked by and won, but it was kind of like that first glimpse of, wow, this might not go the right way. And I went up to Tim in the interview room. I said, what happened out there? He goes, sure looks like coaching to me. I mean, boom. And he was done. It was one comment. I was like, okay. Anybody else? So I got Jacob Warren, Mike Stoll, Charles Davis. Who else? Who's the 4?
Mike Stoll, Charles Davis. I'm sticking with Ramon Foster. I don't get your hate for Ramon Foster.
I will give you the final say. Eric Ainge or Ramon Foster? Now factor this in too. Okay. Ramon Foster has a presence in media in Nashville where there's an awful lot of donors, Caleb. So to have that presence probably helps you sell a little bit more advertising.
And Ramon Foster hasn't, just pissed off other SEC fan bases for no reason to this point. So
Eric Ainge with Georgia?
Yeah, Eric Ainge with Georgia. Now, to be fair, it's not like other radio broadcasters in the past haven't been a professional. Larry Munson out there, we just stepped on their faces with a hobnail boot. I'm like, who actually thinks that's a good call to say something
Georgia
like
fans.
that?
Georgia fans. You gotta know your audience. I mean, I trust me. They had a flamethrower of a stick at WSB, and I used to be able to hear Larry Munson no matter where I was driving, home from Starkville and stuff. And so I heard him a lot. That's what they liked. It's obviously dated. It's no good anymore. It's not gonna.
Because John Ward was never that way.
I thought John Ward was perfect. I mean, I thought John Ward. You knew that John wanted Tennessee to win. Yeah, but it was not over the top.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, I'm leaning Ramon just for that, just because Eric Ainge, I think, is I think you want somebody that's going to cheerlead, that's going to do all the positives, but it's not going to fanboy at the same time. And I kind of worry that Eric would fanboy a little bit more than Ramon Foster. Is that fair to say? Or is I think Ramon Foster would be more measured with everything he covers? Now, I know
you want people to be measured. We don't want Jacob Warren and guests we have on this show to be measured. We want them to be completely objective.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Ramon Foster would be measured. And as Adam points out, he's got NFL credentials. I mean, dude played 10 years in the NFL.
What does that matter?
I don't know. He knows people. You just talked about knowing people and being able to sell. A lot of NFL people live in Nashville.
Well, they're not going to ask him to pitch. I mean, it would just be a presence. I think it may be Ramon Foster now that we've hashed this out on the air.
It's clearly Ramon over Eric Ainge now that we've hashed this out. I don't think it's close.
Yeah, I mean, I've already replaced. I've already replaced Eric Ainge with Ramon Foster. I'm just talking about among the 4. So who are the 4 that we have up now, and who would you vote for among those 4?
All right, so you have Mike Stoll, Ramon Foster, Charles Davis, and Jacob Warren.
So?
I think because of the experience and the smooth transition, I probably vote Charles Davis of those 4. I think Charles Davis would be the smoothest transition into doing this. So I would vote Charles Davis.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you I think it's Mike Stoll, and I didn't think that till we hashed it out. I would hire Jacob Warren. No offense to Mike. I would just hire Jacob because he has the tie to Josh Heupel. But Mike Stoll, you may not know this, his broadcast career started with Mike Keith in high school. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not. But
so they have chemistry.
Yeah. They have chemistry.
And this is the new Mike and Mike.
Oh my gosh.
Who cares about old Mike and Mike in the morning? The Tennessee fans would be like, we got Mike Stoll and Mike Keith.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go 60-40 Warren over Stoll. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
And I hope Mike Stoll's not listening, or he'll be like, "Man,
the one thing
he was like, you're in my wedding, and you're not voting for me." But I got to be objective. That's what I do. Did you know I was in Mike's wedding?
I did not know that. Now the one thing I have to say with Ramon Foster, and I'll say this much, as good as he is, and one thing that may make me draw back, and this is why I blame Charles Davis. Ramon Foster has never hidden his fact. Has never hidden the fact.
Is that what you said?
No, his fact.
You just took his belly out.
That's not what I meant to say. He's never hidden the fact that he thinks Philip Fulmer was wronged. And like he's been very vocal about that.
Oh,
and I get it.
I didn't know that. Now that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And now he was a player when it happened, so he was loyal to his coach. I get it. You know what I mean? It's like you're loyal to your coach, but the press conference when Fulmer got fired, he spoke to the media and he just lashed out at everybody. He's like, that was not very stand-up at Tennessee. They shouldn't have done it. He was very much like this Fulmer was wronged. He was very, very, very clear about how he felt about that at the time.
Well, and I've told you why he was fired in the middle of the season, which is not the way to treat a guy who won a national championship and coached there for 25 years. And that was because Lane Kiffin said, I got to get this job or I'm taking the Washington gig. So with more reasons not to like Lane Kiffin, he caused one of Tennessee's all-time legends to get bleeped upon. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. The Hemp House. Wow. Man, oh, man. You've got to check out the Hemp House. The Hemp House is the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. And guess what I'm going to go do, Caleb? I'm stopping by a little place in Athens called Dynasty Pools and Spas. And I think there's a chance that Dave will be soaking by the end of next week. You can stop by Dynasty Pools and Spas in Athens. They've got everything. They'll ship the steps, the cover, everything to you. Plus, if you just stop by and say hello, you can pick up a Off the Hook Sports shirt for free, nothing, or a Celebrate 98 book. It's completely up to you. Also mention Off the Hook Sports and you get $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com.
What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
I told you. And I was made fun of on a television show. I'm just telling you, Carson Beck is not very good. I saw him early in the season. He's not very tough. And now the former Georgia quarterback is reportedly going to Kentucky. Wow. This is one of the things that I put myself in a position of a father, because I've got kids approximately the same age, where if he came to me and said that Gunnar Stockton is pretty good, and Stockton, excuse me. And if my son said, I'm afraid he's going to beat me out, so I'm going to transfer, I would say, well, that's not the thing to do. But good gravy, certainly don't transfer to Kentucky, which is
wait, where did we get Kentucky? I read Miami.
Okay, either one. The bottom line is whether it's Kentucky or Miami, you're going to one of the not preeminent programs in the nation. I've heard Kentucky. You've heard Miami. We don't completely know. But either one's pretty pathetic. I mean, it's basically saying that this competition is too hard if you go to Miami. And then because you don't want to play in the SEC. And it's probably just all about money. But have some moxie. And I wonder if he was pushed out the door. Now, if you go to Kentucky, you're saying the competition's too hard because I'm afraid of Gunnar Stockton. This is not a good look for Georgia. Whether or not they pushed him out the door or not, losing a guy that was considered a Heisman candidate before the season, I mean, this may be the most significant transfer as far as a name in the short history of the transfer portal. I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could say Trevor Etienne or Caleb Downs, but this guy plays quarterback. This is a big deal. This is not good for Georgia.
I'm glad you said in the transfer portal era, because before the portal, Jalen Hurd transferred, and that was the biggest name. I'm kidding. I'm joking. Let's make the case for Miami real quick. Miami just had Cam Ward, who could end up being the number 1 draft pick. Please, Titans, don't draft him. You guys cannot draft Cam Ward. But anyways,
about the Titans, I can't tell.
Miami's Cam Ward may be the number 1 draft pick. He'll at least be a top 5 pick. There is the thought that they turned him into one. I could see that with him going to Miami because maybe he's worried that, playing at Georgia holds him back because Georgia doesn't do, I don't know, maybe they don't, they don't beef up their quarterback's resumes enough to get drafted. That's a possibility. The other one could be competition. The other one, and I just want to say this, guys, and I've been saying this for a while. I get it, people. Every time I'm out on him, he does something to prove me wrong, like, put together the best game plan possible against Tennessee. But I really do think Mike Bobo is not that good of a coach as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, but you wouldn't make this move off Bobo because Bobo is a pro-style coach, so he's not going to hurt you. This isn't coaching. This has to be about money this is about one of two things, money or competition, and I will take the latter. I don't think that he thought that he could hold off Gunnar Stockton. I talked to a source in Athens that said that's the case, that Carson Beck had a big target on his back and that Gunnar Stockton was going to take a shot and get it, Gunnar.
Okay, what about this? Is it because Hannah Cavender, his girlfriend, goes to Miami? Is he just following his girlfriend?
Well, I didn't know that, but why not?
He's in college.
I mean, also, it's not insane. I mean, these are still young kids that make bad decisions. If you're making decisions off a female or a male, if you're female, if you're making decisions off a significant other when you're 22 years old about your career, you ain't real bright. And I think that's Carson Beck's biggest problem. He just ain't real bright.
No, I agree with you overall. Now, in a vacuum, not thinking about your future, you have the choice with NIL money to live in Athens or Miami. What are you taking?
Well, you're talking to somebody who loves Miami. Like, it's one of my favorite places. But I would still want to play for the best program. Now, I'm not saying if I thought I was completely beat out, which apparently Carson Beck thinks is going to happen, yeah, I'd look at Miami. But no, I would go to Georgia and I would stick it out and I would make sure I beat Gunnar Stockton. And if I didn't, if I really lost my job, not I thought I might lose my job, there's a difference, then I would stay and compete. And I listen, when it comes down to the NFL, I know that people are transferring. It's not viewed like it used to be. But Caleb, I don't think it helps your draft status if you transfer around. I mean, that to me is a bit disconcerting. Now, if you transfer like after your freshman year, let's say like oh man, name escapes me. Get the kid at Cincinnati, LSU.
Oh, Joe Burrow?
Yeah, if you're Joe Burrow and you transfer after 1 year because there was a guy that beat you out, I got that. But Carson Beck has been at Georgia for, 3 years? I mean, this is either he didn't get it done or it's just or they showed him the door. I don't know what the case is, but I ask you, how embarrassing is this for Georgia, or is it?
It's embarrassing for Georgia because, the whole like touting, I got a Lambo last year. Remember that with Carson Beck? And there's that. But it also, what's weird about this is just this week, we just talked 2 days ago about how they're cleaning house in the transfer portal with Noah Thomas and the Branch brothers. They're getting loaded at receiver. How could they get loaded at receiver and then Beck leave unless he thinks he's going to lose the starting job? Or did they pull NIL money away from Beck and say, we need to spend this on receivers? We don't really need Carson Beck.
I'll tell you what I was told after a quick message from Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Well, I'll tell you this. There are a lot of positions. This was the concern that I got from my source in Athens. There are a lot of positions in which you can flash a Lambo. There are a lot of positions that you don't have to be the elite leader. Quarterback is not one of those positions, and they expected him to be a bigger leader. I was told that this is somewhat reminiscent by somebody that would know of Nick Saban saying, this ain't working, I'm changing the offense. This is Kirby Smart. That's why they've taken, 13 guys? How many guys in the transfer portal?
How many have they taken? I'm not sure exactly.
A ton. They're doing a really good job. Look that up. But they're doing a great job in the transfer portal. I think he wants to clean house of some bad attitudes. And I hate to say this, Tennessee fans, but I think this makes Georgia better. I think this is a bad sign that for Tennessee and other SEC teams that Kirby Smart is not willing to stand pat and knock on the door of a national championship. He wants to knock it down.
I'm kind of with you on that.
I mean, this to me is exactly Nick Saban hiring Lane Kiffin. You're just going you're going in a different direction because the old stuff wasn't working.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I think that,
and it's not like Georgia barely lost a national championship. I mean, if they were in the national championship game and lost to Ohio State by 1, you would look at this differently.
Right. No, they lost by 13 to Notre Dame. And honestly, they were out-schemed and out-coached. And it's weird that they lost that game. Here's the crazy part. They lost that game, and we were like, oh, they need Carson Beck back. And Kirby Smart's like, no, we don't. Bye, Carson. I'm going to go all in on Gunner and just get more receivers for him. And I'm with you. I think the Lambo thing, I think there were concerns about Carson Beck's leadership from the start. I think he's very immature. I don't think Kirby Smart, put it this way, Kirby Smart never wants a Johnny Manziel at quarterback. He would never let that happen. And, yes, that's a problem.
Carson Beck is a dialed down Johnny Manziel in every sense of the word. I'm not sure that he does cocaine, probably not. He doesn't party nearly as much, but he definitely likes the flash part of being the Georgia quarterback, and he's not quite as talented. So basically, he's Johnny Manziel dumbed down.
He's the Diet Coke of Johnny Manziel.
He's the Diet Coke of Johnny Manziel. He's the Tab of Johnny Manziel.
He's not as toxic, but he's also not as talented.
All right. So set the poll question for us. Does Carson Beck leaving Georgia as a Tennessee fan scare you or get you more excited? The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney Banks & Jones. By the way, Ramon Foster won our last poll question over Jacob Warren, 48% to Jacob Warren's 28%. Mike Stoll came in at last.
Dave pushed back on me putting Ramon Foster on there. We had to have a debate, so I think I was right.
You are just so self-centered. All right. Charles Davis only getting 23% of the vote. I think he would be very good, but I don't know that you could get Charles Davis. We'll tell you what Charles Davis is making, which is pretty good money. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
Welcome back to the program, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Man, I was in Hound Dogs of Knoxville yesterday, and literally I thought to myself, there are about 15 million things. I counted that you can get at Hound Dogs of Knoxville that will look absolutely fantastic. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off if you want to shop online, because champions look good in orange. Seriously, it's your one-stop shop. hdknoxville.com, hdknoxville.com. Also, I want to thank my friend Jeff Neubert at Joe Neubert Collision Center, because I get to take my car there today. And I don't want to take my car there today because I don't want it to be wrecked. But I know after nearly 50 years, Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNeubertCollision.com, JoeNeubertCollision.com. There's absolutely no other direction to go, and that is Joe Neubert Collision Center. All right, this day in Tennessee sports history, before we get to how would the Vols have fared against those two teams last night? And I've got some thoughts on that game as wowzers. I didn't have to take my Ambien last night. I'm joking. I'll take Ambien, but that game was, till the end, was just awful. All right. So this day in Tennessee sports history is.
So before we do this day in Tennessee sports history, I want to tease the poll question, and then we'll come back to it. Because
tease the poll question.
How should Vol fans and fans of other SEC rivals react to Georgia QB Carson Beck transferring? Celebrate! UGA is imploding! Fear! Kirby's getting serious.
I think the latter.
I think the latter too. Mm-hmm. We'll get to the results in a minute. But first off, today is the 15-year anniversary, Dave, of Tennessee, with basically half their team suspended due to gun charges in basketball, upsetting number 1 Kansas 76-68 when Kansas was undefeated, using like 3 walk-ons in the game to win that game. Remember that game?
I do. And I remember how that news leaked out very slowly. It was just a gun, and then it was just an unregistered gun, and then it was just the gun had the registration scratched off, which is like a serious felony. I think Tyler Smith is very fortunate that things didn't go more awry in that whole deal. And I hate to throw Mike Griffith under the bus, but God bless him. Tyler Smith was a source of his. And I remember Mike trying to defend Tyler in that, hey, these guys could be attacked at any point. They're public figures, and people are coming after them. No, they're really not. I mean, I think girls come after them and think that they think, hey, I might be able to frame this guy or get pregnant, or I do think that happens more than you want to admit. But I don't think average Bob is going to say, hey, there's Tyler Smith. I'm going to go pick a fight with him. I hope he doesn't shoot me.
No, you're right. That is very true. Although I do think sometimes people have picked fights with athletes sometimes to try to like.
Do you remember when Dak Prescott got the bejesus beat out of him in spring break?
Yes, I do actually. I remember that very well. Funny enough, Tyler. The thing is, Tennessee beat Kansas that day. They ended up getting everybody but Tyler back and going to the Elite Eight. They could have won the national title if Tyler didn't get suspended from that team.
Oh,
I mean,
I don't know that far.
That team, they went to the Elite Eight without him, and they were 1 point away from the Final Four.
Oh, okay.
Now, the funny thing was that was within 2 months of Keith Richardson getting arrested for the armed robbery that happened. And nationally, on the message boards across the country, people were referring to Knoxville as Glocky Top at that point. And
was it a Glock?
We don't know, but Glocky Top sounded funny.
It does sound funny.
So it was kind of, it reminds me of it's that game though was just incredible. I mean, it felt like Tennessee had came together as a team because of all the suspensions, and Kansas. I never thought Bill self-managed egos well, so I never thought he had Kansas humble enough for that game.
I want to go back to something you said. Tyler Smith, if that whole thing doesn't happen, it is interesting to think about how that may have changed history. I think that if Tyler Smith is all good and fine, that they do make a serious run, and Tennessee doesn't have to commit a recruiting violation as they did later on with, what was the young man's name who went to Ohio State?
Didn't go to Ohio State. I thought. Who was it? I can't even remember now. I know you're talking.
Help us on the message board. But I think that I think that could change things. I think that could have changed things, forever. But at the end of the day, a lot of basketball coaches are a little shady, and when we look at it in retrospect, I mean, Bruce Pearl pushed the narrative behind the scenes that Tyler Smith was a target of fan criticism. But he also did the Illinois thing, which was a little shady. And then the young man who I can't remember his name. You got his name yet?
Sorry, my computer froze on me. That's why I left
I didn't know you left. I don't watch you.
Okay. Bruce Pearl barbecue. Let's see. Who was it with? I thought it was with Trey Golden, but I don't want to throw Trey. I don't want to name.
It's not Trey Golden.
It was not Trey Golden. Okay. Let's see.
Help us on the message board. He was really good. He went to Ohio State. But anyway, all right. So the show represented by
Aaron Kraft. Aaron Kraft.
Bingo. All right, Aaron Kraft. Pretty crafty. All right, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney Will West will join us from the Sports Animal here momentarily. How about a preview of Tennessee hoops as the Vols face Texas? How important is it, Caleb, for this basketball team to bounce back, not necessarily get a win, but good gravy? I mean, not play like they did this week against Florida, because that was historically bad.
Oh, it's very important. And I'm gonna bring up a few things and why they need to bounce back against Texas, because Dave, there is historical precedent for Rick Barnes and the Vols themselves having amazing starts that end up in awful finishes in basketball. So I want to break that down real quick, because let's start with Rick Barnes.
Down real quick.
Let's start with Rick Barnes. Okay. So, about this time 15 years ago, when Tennessee was beating Kansas with a bunch of walk-ons because their guys were out here, rolling around in pistols or Glocks or whatever. Texas was number 1. So 2008-2009, the Longhorns went 23-12 and made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. They returned everybody the next year and added 2 5-stars, Avery Bradley and Jordan Hamilton, plus 4-star Sean Williams. They were a favorite to win the national title. They started, Dave, 17-0 and were number 1. Then they lost on the road to a top 10 team, Kansas State, in the middle of January. And Dave, they limped after a 17-0 start. They limped to finish 24-10 and lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Just had a horrible January and February. Now, then there's Tennessee basketball on its own. And, I mean, you know where I'm going here, but there's the 2000-2001 Tennessee basketball team, Jerry Green's last year, that, again, had an amazing start. They got up to number 4 in the country, starting, I believe, pulling it up now, 16-1. And what did they do?
What did they do?
You remember that 2000-2001 team, Dave. Limped to the finish, finishing 21-9 in the regular season, getting an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament after splitting the SEC tournament and losing 70-63 to Charlotte to close out the year, and Jerry Green's gone. I say all this to...
Did I ever tell you my Rodney White story? Can we have a quick Uncle Dave moment?
Sure, let's go.
Okay. You remember Roddy White?
Like the NFL player?
No. I think it was Roddy White. He played for Charlotte, and he was like a swing guy, and he was good. And I used to love covering basketball because it wasn't as bunker mentality as football. Like
Rodney White. I'm looking at him up now.
Rodney White. Everybody in football thinks that you're trying to steal their signs or signals or something, and everybody's paranoid. But in basketball, it's not like that. And I remember I had a little one-on-one, and I hated that you never turn your recorder off, Caleb. But I remember I turned my recorder off, and he would have been fine with this on the record, I think. And I said, I can just tell that you really think you're going to beat Tennessee. And he goes, oh, we're going to beat them. I mean, they were that confident. I never had a guy tell me, and I was in radio, so I couldn't use it. But had I been a newspaper, I mean, we were on the record. I would have used it, but there was really no way to use it. It would have sounded like I was just making it up. But he definitely said, oh, we're definitely going to win. And Tony Harris chucked up one of the absolute ugliest shots at the end of that game that you have ever seen. All right. Let's take a look at Texas for a second. Texas is one of the many basketball teams in the SEC that is expected to make the NCAA tournament. As a matter of fact, I've read where there could be 13 teams from the SEC make the NCAA tournament. We'll see how that goes. Former Valdane Bradshaw and Tom Hart will be on the call. But what do you make about what do you think about the University of Texas, their basketball program? What are your thoughts?
So they've lost their first 2 SEC games. They lost 80-60 to Texas A&M, but then they were at home and they faced Auburn and they lost 87-82. So they're much more dangerous at home. Texas is playing desperate in this game, Dave. Their backs are against the wall because they really need an SEC win. You know, again, the bandwidth is only there for a certain amount of teams to make the NCAA tournament from the SEC, and there will be somebody at the bottom, and Texas is in danger of being one of those bottom teams. So Tennessee is going into Austin with facing a desperate team that is bleeding out, honestly, and that is a dangerous type of team to face. And so, I mean, this is a wounded dog if there was ever a wounded dog, and I think that Tennessee has to be very careful because they're going to be much more intense they're going to be as intense as Florida was the other night. And look, if Tennessee loses this one, then, I mean, you got to wonder how will it wreck Tennessee's psyche at that point, because you lose 2 games and you really start to question how good you are. Because one of the things that hurt Tennessee, Dave, that a lot of people aren't talking about is that this is nobody's fault. This is nobody's fault. Rick Barnes scheduled as tough as he possibly could in November and December. But it just so happened that all the teams he scheduled 2 years out turned out to not be that good this year. So Tennessee's schedule strength is not where it needs to be. They don't really have that many impressive wins. Their best one is at Illinois, which is a good win.
But I would say the same thing about football. The conference is so good that your RPI is going to skyrocket in the next 2 months.
Right, but the point is, it's not about getting into the NCAA tournament. The point is, we don't know how good this Tennessee team is yet because of that.
Now, you brought that up. Well, you didn't bring it up. I thought of that the other day after visiting with you. I kind of feel like I did in early October with the football team, or maybe before the Arkansas game. I don't feel like I really know how good this basketball program is. And I don't feel like I really know how good Tennessee's football program was last year because of the ups and downs, the injuries, and playing pathetic opponents. So you're right. There's still a big unknown with this basketball team. And I think the biggest unknown and the biggest concern is, what does Tennessee do when their outside shot isn't hitting? Because that'll get you bounced out of the tournament against South Dakota State.
And guess what? Your outside shot's not going to hit one game in the NCAA tournament. That's always the case. You're going to have a game, and you know this, Dave. If you want to be a national champion, you got to win a game where your outside shot's not hitting and the other team's hitting everything. And you got to find a way to win that game, right?
Yep, I agree with that.
And we still don't know. I'll give you, last year, that is where the difference was. If that was happening, Dalton Connect would have found a way to get some points. And the only reason they didn't win it last year was because Jonas Adu took himself out of the game and quit against Purdue. And every Arkansas media person can come at me all they want. He quit. Watch that game. He took himself out. And Toby Awaka got in foul trouble. So they were screwed. This year, the Florida game really revealed, if their outside shot's not hitting, I don't know if they know how to manufacture points, this team, this year. And I did not think that before Tuesday night. But I think you and I are both of the same caliber of, if Tennessee had lost to Florida like 71-63, we wouldn't be sitting here questioning whether or not they're still a national title contender, right?
No,
because it's a top 10 team on the road. It's like, okay, fine.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and tell you that, okay, like the Joe Milton running out of bounds thing, it's going to take a lot to erase that Florida game from my memory. And when you get into the NCAA tournament, if they're a 2 seed, a 7 seed, whatever, in the back of my mind, I'm going to think they could go ice cold. In other words, Tennessee is one of the teams in the entire nation that I wouldn't even think of gambling on either way.
No, I wouldn't either. Because you don't know when they're going to go ice cold. And this is, and Adam says it, and this is kind of, I just brought up the history of Texas. Rick Barnes teams have a bad tendency of all of a sudden going from looking like a title contender in December to getting mediocre in the middle of January. And now I placed that previously. I always attributed that to one and done don't mesh well with Rick Barnes' system. But I always feel like those are one and done freshmen who, let's be honest, there's a difference between a one and done freshman and a one and done fifth year senior. A one and done freshman is like, why am I playing college basketball? I should be in the NBA right now. It's stupid that I had to go to college. Whereas a one and done fifth year senior, like a Chaz Lanier, is like, how can I develop under Rick Barnes? So I think the teams are a little bit better constructed than previous Rick Barnes teams. So we're going to have to see how that all plays out going forward. Because I think this team is mentally, I think they're much more mature and much better equipped to handle Rick Barnes. Here's another problem. Rick Barnes is principle of you earn playing time. He's tiring his guys out again because he's refusing to play guys who don't earn it. So Sakai Ziegler played 36 minutes Tuesday night. Dave, why is Sakai Ziegler playing that many minutes when you know you've lost the game?
I mean, goodness gracious, you got to play somebody. I mean, it was
play
so
your walk-ons and backups once the game's over.
I mean, they've only got 12 guys on the bench. I mean, it was so bad for so long. I mean, like, if you told me that they were down 20 points with 10 minutes left, that's fine. Sub everybody. But they weren't even in the game halfway through the first half. And you've got to play somebody.
No, now, but once the 10, but not 36 minutes with Sakai.
No.
21, 10 minutes left, you can come back. It was 30 with 5 minutes left, and Sakai was still on the court. Why?
Well, let me throw a couple of things at you. The guy you need to watch out for is Arthur Kaluma. He's coming off a fantastic game against Auburn. as he posted career highs in points, 34, field goals made, 12 of 16, hit 5 of 6 threes. You do not want him to get hot. He also had 8 rebounds, a couple of assists, 2 blocks. He's an overall good player. So Arthur Kaluma is the guy that could give Tennessee trouble. Now, we haven't even mentioned the fact that Rick Barnes going back to Texas. Is this emotional for him? Does that have any factor, or is that ancient Rome history news?
I think at this point it's no longer emotional because he's already done it a couple of times. Also, I think Rick Barnes is a lot more mature. I mean, he's 70. He should be mature. I don't know why I would say that, but like Rick Barnes is very Zen-like and intelligent, and so he's very emotionally able to handle stuff like this. It's not like, I don't know if you know this, Dave, but when Bruce Pearl first went back to Knoxville 10 years ago, he was like, this was personal for me. I wanted to win this game. I'm like, Bruce, you're saying that like Tennessee like wanted to fire you. They had to fire you. He said it like it was like
he doesn't think that.
Oh, he thinks he was wronged. I know he thinks he was wronged.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get revenge on like, but like the person who fired
he didn't want revenge. He wanted back. I mean, he had hoped that who was hired right after him, Donnie Tyndall?
Conzo Martin. You talking about right before Donnie Tyndall, Conzo Martin?
Okay, so is it Conzo Donnie?
Yeah.
Donnie Conzo. Okay.
It was Conzo Donnie.
When Conzo was gone, he pushed hard for the job.
Oh, let's be clear on this. He was behind the pushing for Conzo to be gone before.
No. I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
Because remember, he got hired at Auburn.
No. That's not.
Your timing's off. He got hired at Auburn before Conzo was before Conzo left.
Okay. I know that he wanted to come back for a certain reason, which might have been a phone call from him.
Yes, but to want to come back.
Somebody had an idea that I should write the 10 biggest mistakes that Mike Hamilton has ever made. I'm not going to tell you who that someone is, but he has curly hair. And I said, which should be number 1? And he goes, well, of course, me. The show represented by Banks and Jones.
But that's my point. He called you doing that when Conzo was still coaching at Tennessee, Dave.
Right.
He was gunning for the job when Conzo was still there.
Right. But you weren't around the Knoxville market. You know what cost Conzo his job?
Not being
racism.
You think I can't go there?
No. I'm going there. There was a group of fans that referred to him as Quanzo on a talk show here in Knoxville, and that host, who we agree, disagree at times, and I don't call out other media members, he let that go on and on and on because it was a good bit. I thought it was in poor taste. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Will West of the Sports Animal coming up next.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Welcome back to the program, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, Banks & Jones. We'll be joined by Will West here momentarily. Always look forward to that. Will is absolutely fantastic. Got some, I thought, really good thoughts on the transfer portal on his show with Tyler Ivins that you can hear from 3 to 7 on the Sports Animal in Knoxville. And I jumped on board their program. I might not be real popular because I'm just about out of patience with Kelsey Pope. I don't call for people's jobs, and I'm certainly not doing that. But I talked about that on Will's program yesterday, and I'm just going to tell you that my concern is, do you remember the names Pat Washington and Larry Slade?
I remember them very well.
Okay. Philip Fulmer was overly loyal to them to a fault. And Caleb, I'm not talking about 1 year. I'm not talking about 2 years. I'm not talking about 3 years. I'm talking like 5 years that they were not very good. Were not very good coaches. Now, Pat Washington it was covered up a little bit more because he had so many talented receivers, right?
Yes. Yeah, it didn't really matter. I mean, it wasn't the wide receiver U of the 80s. Honestly, Tennessee wide receiver U was more, they were more that in the 80s with Johnny Majors, but they still turned out some pretty good talent in the 90s. It's just some of them turned out to be like Joey Kent and Marcus Nash didn't work out in the pros. They weren't NFL receivers the way we thought they were.
Yep. And then Larry Slade was the defensive backs coach. And he was the other guy that people had a big problem with. I was told by a defensive back that had about an 8-year career in the NFL. When he showed up to camp, they watched him for a day and they said, forget everything you learned in college and we're going to reteach you, but you're not going to play this year. And he didn't play his first year in the NFL, and he went on and had 7 good years. But they basically thought that his fundamentals and his technique was so bad that they just needed to chuck it.
Well, I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
And I'm very aware with who you're talking about.
That's
so
right. I was going to tell you. Now, what about that? It's Jabari Greer. I don't know, Will West of the Sports Animal. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thank you for having me, guys. We appreciate it, man.
Hey, man, I love having you on. It was fun chopping it up about Kelsey Pope. I'm curious after our conversation, your thoughts on Kelsey Pope, because I don't even really think I got your take.
My thoughts on it. I don't know how much of this is on him. I don't think they're running. You just like in the run and shoot. If you go old school and what Bryles did and what Heupel used to do and what Levy does, it isn't this necessarily. But when you run to space, right? That's what you do. They call it run to grass. Is what they used to call it back in the day. I'm old, so that's kind of that was the verbiage that was used. And they're not doing that right now. Now, Levy won't do that. Levy will, if you watch what Jeff Levy did at Ole Miss, Oklahoma, when Brett Venables allowed him to run his offense. And what he does at Mississippi State is he'll do a lot of crossing stuff and levels concepts and things like that. For whatever reason, it seems like Tennessee wants to do a lot of double moves in the middle of the field and things like that and kind of run into coverage, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I think for me, I don't know how I can necessarily grade Kelsey Pope when the receivers are running the routes that they're doing right now, which runs them right into traffic, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
May I argue that they're making the wrong read and running into traffic because they haven't been properly coached?
Well, I mean, if it's run to grass and the defensive back's 12 yards off the line of scrimmage, Grass is not 12 yards from the line of scrimmage. They don't know that.
I don't know. Maybe I'm too down on Kelsey. All right. Will, I want to talk to you about transfer portal, brought to you in part by our friends at Quality Tire Pro, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said hello. Why is Tennessee struggling in the transfer portal, Will West?
I think a lot of their money that they did not expect to have to throw out went to Nico and Mike Matthews. And so I think it hurt their nest egg just a little bit, their war chest, if you will. Tennessee has a solid, but not at the level that Ohio State, Texas, Michigan, those schools have. Tennessee has not been one that's been willing to pay what some of those schools will for new talent to come in. And I haven't necessarily had a problem with that because we haven't seen anyone that goes and gets 20-plus guys from the transfer portal. That's not a recipe to building a championship team. Oregon had the most I think we saw this year. They were at an 18, right? So I think it's not the way they want to build a roster, number one. I think number two, some of their Nico doing what he did to kind of hold Tennessee, I don't want to say hostage, but to use his leverage to make sure that because of all the hype, you had to pay Nico. He had to come back. His family wanted more money. You had to give him more money. They did. I don't think Nico wanted that. I think his family wanted that. So he played the game on social media, and it was what it was. And then Mike Matthews played the game as well to get more money. I think from what I am told, when Duke paid that kid from Tulane $4 million per year, that was that everybody else's number went up as well. And so Tennessee is having to fundraise to bring in guys and get more money. I was told this last cycle, not this cycle. This is what I was told in the summer. Tennessee does not call and say, $1.5 million, do you want to come? And what Tennessee says is, sit down with us and let's negotiate if you come into town. That's not the way Michigan does it. That's not the way Auburn does it. That's not the way Florida does it. That's not the way Alabama does it. So I think they're a little behind when it comes to that as well. But I just think that which is one of the reasons why the NCAA charges against Tennessee or allegations against Tennessee made no sense. I had a guy that literally for a living, what he does is broker NIL deals, call me and say, Wes, how are they going to get y'all for doing the one thing y'all don't bleep and do? And I'm like, I don't even know, man. And then Tennessee fought it and Tennessee won. But I think it's not one thing. I think it's a number of things. Money's part of it. The way they do business is part of it. One thing that I am told that hurts Tennessee as well is at other schools, look, people get their NIL money. And then if Nico goes to a car dealership or Squirrel White at the time went to a car dealership, you like at another school, that guy gets 40% of the money because you want him to actually show up and you want him to be invested in them, try to recoup some of their investment and what they paid these players. Tennessee only pays 20%. So instead of 40%. So so that Tennessee had trouble getting guys to show up to events they were scheduled to be at. If they did show up, you know what I mean? Maybe they weren't necessarily as locked in as they would have been if they were making twice as much money as that. So I think that you put all of those things together and Tennessee's just a little behind in the transfer portal, but it's not so bad that, I mean, again, they were 10-2 this year and they made the playoff. I also think, unlike a lot of other schools, they are actually trying to pay attention to their roster limitations. Whereas, you know, we had the conversation from JB Chadwell last year to Yahoo Sports where he said, hey, I lost two of my best players to LSU who are walk-ons, and they gave them $300,000 a car and a condo, and I can't compete with that at Liberty. And so I think that Tennessee maybe isn't using that walk-on type situation to just throw cash at a guy to get him in to be able to build more depth by using the transfer portal that way.
So, Will, you know, I want to bolster your point for a minute. I want to ask you more questions, but I'm looking at the transfer portal team rankings right now, and to nobody's surprise, because it's been in the news, LSU is literally cleaning house in the portal right now. They are like cleaning up. They're dominating. Texas Tech's number 2, Ole Miss is number 3, Auburn's number 4, Florida State's number 5. I mean, I look at that.
Wait, where's Tennessee?
Oh, Tennessee's way down. Like Tennessee's way. They're not top 50. The reason I'm bringing it up is because looking at that top 5, LSU, Auburn, Florida State all have coaches who people are really souring on right now. And I mean, particularly funny enough, LSU, given the fact that Brian Kelly is he can't go win a title at Notre Dame, and Marcus Freeman just matched at Notre Dame Brian Kelly's best year at Notre Dame. So taking all that into account, are we looking at this backwards? Are top teams in the transfer portal typically more desperate teams than they are teams running good programs?
I think so. I think there's also two minds to it because I mean we've heard that Lane Kiffin is of the belief I can't sign the type of recruiting class that Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, those Alabama, those schools can. So how I'm going to have to get players through the transfer portal. Jeff Brom, I can't have the same type of recruiting class that Clemson and Florida State have. So I have to use the transfer portal to bring guys in and get this roster up to date. And both of those guys are really good coaches, and both of those guys have had a lot of success. If you look at it, like it's just not the way you build a championship program. To me, it's supplementing, right? That's what it is. I like to go to the gym. It's protein shakes. If I'm living on protein shakes, nutritionally, I'm going to be in a deficit. But when I add the protein shake to what I'm already getting with my diet, that'll help me hit the numbers I need to hit when it comes to my macros. Tennessee, I don't think wants to be in the situation. Like, do you want to be Colorado right now? But look at all the schools that usually go back the last 3 to 4 years. The schools bringing in the most guys in the transfer portal. Tennessee's better than they are. So why would Tennessee want to be in the situation that those guys are? I know from a fan standpoint, and admittedly, I am super not a recruiting guy. From a fan standpoint, you want the booms. You want that we're bringing guys in. It's kind of like with the NFL. You want guys to get it done and, to bring in big-name free agents. But the truth is, you'd rather get it done in the draft than big-name free agency because most teams that build the super team in the NFL through free agency, something happens and that team implodes. I just think that Tennessee, I like the way they're doing business. I just also think this specific cycle, they're a little handcuffed because they did not expect to have to throw Nico and Mike Matthews the kind of money that they had to throw them this year.
That's really troubling to me. Listen, everybody wants more money. Nobody would, if Cumulus Broadcasting came to you and said, we would love to give you a $20,000 raise, you're not going to say no. But I know you have a contract. I mean, that's essentially what Nico had was a contract to go back, or Mike Matthews. I mean, they had some sort of agreement coming in the door. That's very, very troubling to me that they would demand more money and make their team worse.
So if you're looking at Nico, you're starting, right? And I'm not saying it's the way it should be, or this was the exact conversation. But if you just look hypothetically, Arch is making $1 million more than Nico. Arch can't play yet, right? Nico, slightly below average quarterback in the SEC this year, or maybe an average quarterback in the SEC because it was a down year for quarterbacks. So if Nico can play and Arch can't, why is he making $1 million more? If this kid from Tulane has similar numbers to Nico and Duke pays him $4 million, then why is Nico going to be willing to make half of what the kid from Tulane is when they're a similar level quarterback and Nico has higher upside? Probably not. Also, again, it's about leverage. There are no contracts legitimately. So the leverage that Nico has, because I have said this on our show, and it's going to make a lot of people mad in the chat right now, I would have let him walk. That's what I would have done. He's not good enough yet. And I think we all see his upside of what he can be, but I would have gone and got someone that can win games right now. I don't care what he could be in 2 years. I would go get a guy that can win more games than Nico right now, where I don't have to put training wheels on my offense because he's getting ready. Now, maybe he's so close that it was worth doing that, and that's fine. And I've asked the question, when we look at 8 of the 12 teams in the playoff this year had transfer portal quarterbacks, most of them making less money than Nico. Would it have been the best decision? Like, have we learned that you just go transfer portal and let somebody else develop your quarterback for you? You don't just sit there and eat 2 to 3 years waiting for your guy to get ready while you pay him $2 to $3 million a year. I don't love that it happened. I will tell you this. I have been told by multiple people around the team that Nico has told his teammates, I don't want to do this. My parents are the ones wanting to do this. And so that's kind of the situation, is the parents are saying, but let's be real. If you're going to hand that kid to Tulane $4 million and Nico has a name and a lore to him already, how much money could Nico have gotten, right? So if you're giving him 2 and he could get 4 somewhere else, he's looking at guys that aren't as developed as he is, making 3. He's going to want more money. Like, honestly, I love my job. I love my bosses. I love everybody I work with. If I could make twice as much money going somewhere else, I would have to legitimately consider that, even if I'm happy where I am right now. And I think that was kind of a situation that Nico's family looked at.
Kel, I'm going to jump in for a second. This is something that I wasn't going to report, but you essentially confirmed it. I was told that Nico's dad, his frustration with his son and lack of success has led to issues in post-game where he's been griping in front of visiting prospects.
I believe that is accurate. And other people around the athletics department. And part of it's, look, it's your kid, right? He thinks he's ready. We all saw it. He ain't ready. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't ready. They got everything out of him they could have. They had to change up the entire offense. One, because the strength of the team was the defense this year and the running game with Dylan Sampson. But if Nico was ready, the strength of the team would not have been their defense and Dylan Sampson. So and it's your kid, right? So you want to believe in your kid. You want to believe that your kid's ready. And we all see the potential. He ain't ready. And so, but if you believe your kid is ready, that kind of is what it is. And we see this a lot more in baseball than we do in football. And we've seen it with certain former high 4 or 5-star recruits at quarterback that he wanted to listen to dad instead of listen to the coaches. And so now he's about to go to his 5th team. So we've seen that happen. I'm not trying to say people's name out loud, but we all know who I'm talking about. So it's one of those things that it's tough. I will tell you, man, I have been told by a lot of people, Nico is a great kid. Nico is happy where he is. He does not want to do any of this stuff, and he does not want to go anywhere else. He loves his teammates. He loves his coaches. He loves East Tennessee. He loves University of Tennessee. But when the family looks at it and they thought he should have been throwing the ball 35 or 40 times a game, and they think he should be making twice as much money as he's making right now, that's kind of what led to that situation.
I was told the exact same thing yesterday.
Well,
all right, go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, and in a minute, I want to dive further into concerns about Nico because we have a few things to talk about with that. But first, I just want to wrap this up. I feel like I got to be the positive light for Tennessee on this just for a second. How much of this is because, Will, you're telling me some things that on an overall scale are revealing to me, because I had heard in the summer that Tennessee's actually ahead of the curve with NIL more than anybody, that they think of A, B, C, D, E, and F, not just A to get a player to Knoxville. Are you telling me that A, B, C, D, E, F method that Tennessee had on an NIL front when it comes to things like the transfer portal is pushing them behind other schools, or is it where they want to be?
I think it's where they want to be. I also think it's there used to be an old Black Flag song called "The Process of Weeding Out," and I think there's allows them to weed out the mercenaries a little bit, and by saying, or the people who are in this situation, like.
We lost you.
Will froze. All right, Will froze.
Let's just save him right here. Can I screenshot this?
No, it's absolutely fantastic. It looks like God is descending upon him from his right. We'll get Will back on here in just a second. 4 downs. What are we going to do with him? We're going to drop him there and get him back? What are we going to do? All right, we will get Will back. 4 downs. Brought to you by our fantastic friends. I'm still working on getting Will back. Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. 4 downs is now.
4 downs.
We got him.
4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Hold on, let Will West finish his thought before we get to 4 downs.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. A little internet issue there with the weather.
Play the element again, Caleb. What are you telling me to do here? I will say this: between John Adams not knowing how to use any computer and your internet connection, this has been a hell of a week for me, Will.
Yeah, sorry about that, but guys, look, I will just tell you without question, there was a guy that if I said his name, everybody listening that follows recruiting, the draft, college football, he's going to be a first-round pick. Was interested in coming to Tennessee. The guy who managed that relationship for him to broker him for the family told me point blank, Michigan told us this much money. Auburn told us this much money. Alabama told us this much money. Ole Miss told us this much money. Tennessee said, let's come and talk. And this guy manages a lot of people and represents a lot of people as an agent. And he said that's one of the big things holding Tennessee back is that they will not tell you on the phone, yes, 1.2 million, 1.6 million, 800,000. You're going to have to sit down with them. But I think it helps Tennessee from being where Florida State was this past year or A&M was 2 years ago, where you bring in a bunch of mercenaries and then mess up your locker room, because it is literally only about money.
And what a tough balance.
So they're actually Tennessee's valuing culture over a lot of other things. By the way, that's how Michigan won the national title 2 years ago too. Yep. Michigan, it's funny enough, they said, let's spend our NIL money to keep our players here for chemistry rather than go out and get a bunch of superstars.
Yeah, it's also how Tennessee got their rears beat against Ohio State.
That is true. Players matter. Jimmy's and
4
Joe's, right?
downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
The grades that we throw out are not going to be what should pique your interest. The breakdown of a guy that we've already talked about called
Iamaleava
is what you need to pay attention to. So, Cooper Mays, what should people do that want to be a part of the program?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you, Coop. What down?
Coop here. First down.
Always with the energy. All right, I want to break down in 4 downs, 4 quads. Let's say it's like the old quarter system in college. And I want you to give me an A to F grade on Nico in October, November, December, and January. I'm sorry, the college football playoffs. And we have, so it would be, I'm sorry,
September, October, November.
September, which would include the August game, October, November, and the college football playoffs. So let's look back at September. What would you grade Nico purely based off of September? And if you want to, you can grade it on the curve because he was first-year starter, and the column is on offthehooksports.com if you want to read it and follow along. But let me ask you, Will, what would you grade A to F Nico's one game in August and September?
C-.
Okay. Caleb, what about you?
In September?
And the one game in August.
I'm actually going to go B-. I think I go a little hard on him. He did set a record for most passing yards and a half against Chattanooga, guys.
Wow. I could have gotten close to that. All right.
Well, you did, and no one else has in Tennessee history. So
that is true. That is true.
I thought it was a C.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Thanks, Coop. Let's go to November.
What about October?
Let's
Why are
go
you
to
skipping October, Dave?
I drank way too much coffee this morning. All right, let's go to October. I'll start first, and I know I'm being boring because I gave Nico a C for September. I'm going C+ for October.
I'll go C. I think he was average. He would like it even when it went well for Nico. He was an average SEC quarterback. The plays Riley Leonard was making last night, there was not a time this season he could make those plays. And I would say Riley Leonard's an above-average quarterback, not a great quarterback, but an above-average quarterback. I would say a C for September. Or, excuse me, October.
Yeah.
I'll go.
We have to have a calendar in front. 3 of us have to have a calendar in front of us. I would actually, Caleb, let me interrupt here for a second. I was very close to knocking him down a full letter grade for running out of bounds at the end of the Arkansas game. But instead, I went with a C+ because he did say the ball slipped out of his hands, and I guess I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Caleb?
Well, see, I'm still going C because that Arkansas game is an F- to me because the ball didn't just slip out of his hands there. There was a play before where he fumbled the snap. He legitimately got nervous. The moment was too big for him to lose the drive.
His grip was also bad on a strip sack. I mean,
yes, so there was that, and then he didn't play good against Florida, but I moved it all the way up to a C because of the second half against Alabama. Nico played very, very well in the second half against Alabama, and I can't look beyond that. Like, that's your rival. That's Tennessee's biggest win. And they beat them because of how Nico played in the second half of that game.
Here's what's tough. It's tough for me to grade what Nico did because I think there are times Josh Heupel did not play to strengths and did not do the things that Lane Kiffin staff said they had to do for Crompton, right? Where we're going to roll him out, we're going to give him a couple levels, and we're going to give him 3 options of this guy, that guy, or run. And I never thought that Tennessee did anything to help him. There's the Florida game, the last drive, or the first drive of the second half, that drive in overtime are the only 2 times that, do we remember, if anybody watched it on television, Jordan Rodgers called taking the access. If they're going to sit in that shell, that 2-deep shell with 3 safeties over the top, then throw dink and dunk them to death and see if you can make a guy miss. And if you don't, well, you got 5 or 6 yards and you're staying on schedule. Tennessee was not disciplined enough, I think, in my mind, from a coaching aspect to do that. So I'm not going to completely crush Nico. So that's why I agree with you that the performance as a whole against Arkansas, but I'm probably a little different than you guys. I'm not looking at the individual. Was this decision good? Was that decision good? I guess I'm kind of looking at what could he do? And to me, at his best, he was average, and what he was capable of handling and they could feed him it never got better than average.
Let me ask you this. Before last season, I would have said Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel were on par as far as offensive coaches. We're about the same. There wasn't a big difference between the two. But we saw what happened last year with Nico. You mentioned the Crompton thing, and that was coaching mastery. What Lane Kiffin did there for a guy who I know personally had zero competence at the time, to make him into a more than serviceable player in the second half of that season was phenomenal. So, Lane Kiffin or Josh Heupel, better offensive coach?
I think the better offensive mind is probably Lane. I think the guy I would rather have running a program is Josh Heupel.
Okay.
I agree.
Who's pretty good? I can't argue that. Caleb?
What Will just said, and this is something I never attributed to Heupel back in the day, but Dave, it's what you used to say about Steve Spurrier, which was that Steve Spurrier would get way too impatient and would keep trying to chuck it if you keep things in front of you. But no one accused him of not being an offensive genius. So are we saying that like Josh Heupel is more impatient than even a Spurrier is in that regard and trying to hit the big shot?
Well, it could be that, but then there could be the other side of like there were times that I've seen talking to one of Tennessee's basketball coaches, and they kept doing something that didn't work. And I asked, why in the world are you doing this? And he's like, because I watch it in practice 5 days a week, and I know they can do it. So I just need to get them to translate it to the game. So is Heupel seeing them hit on those routes downfield even against that shell in practice, and it was a matter of just trying to get it to translate to the game because they knew how to attack it. They knew they could do it. They just couldn't get their guys to execute it during game time. So I do think he is more rigid than Spurrier, right? Spurrier was willing to say, well, we're going to run these 15 plays. I want to run them out of 15 sets, and I'll attack you a different way. Heupel didn't do a whole lot of that. Heupel didn't move his receivers a lot. Heupel doesn't you got a skinny receiver like Squirrel White, but you get that guy in motion so that he can get off the line of scrimmage a little cleaner if somebody's on top of him. Chris Brazzell, what does Chris Brazzell do well? He is a Cedric Tillman-like receiver. You throw the ball up to him in single coverage down the sideline, and you let him go make a play. Now, I do think Nico was not comfortable throwing the ball outside. I do. I think that was a Nico thing as much as anything. But so I think Heupel's more rigid than Spurrier was. But I don't know. But Spurrier was also probably more impatient than Spurrier. And I think both are still great. Spurrier, an all-time great offensive mind. If Heupel can win a ring, I'll put him in that category. But I think he's a great offensive mind right now.
I was going to tell you, if not for Kelsey Pope, he would have been caught like a 50 balls, 1,000 yards. No, I'm kidding. I don't want to be too hard on Kelsey Pope. 4 Downs brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. rickterryjewelry.com. Valentine's Day coming up. That's where you should be.
Tennessee Center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
Thank you, Coop. Appreciate that. So we are into November. Your grade for Nico in November.
I will say, again, C.
I know, it's so boring.
Well, there's never a time that I thought it was above average, right?
No, I thought of the idea of the column, and after I wrote it, I was like, this is the most boring thing I've ever written.
So really, I'm like, is because I think there's an individual game where he's an F. I think there's an individual game where he's a B. But when I put all of those together, I get a C or a C minus for each of these months, most likely.
Okay. I mean, Caleb, any disagreement?
I'm with you guys on C, but I mean, look, he did throw 4 touchdown passes in the last 2 games of the year. I don't know if you want to count. That was not the same Vanderbilt team that beat Alabama, but that's worth something, right? And I'm just
yeah, great. You're good by Vanderbilt the last game of the year.
All SEC Center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right. College football playoff grade, just 1 game to grade. So pretty easy. Ohio State, things didn't go so well.
I'll say C minus. I know he was tough as nails out there. I'm not grading you on being tough. I'm grading you about getting the ball to your hands and making sure your team stays on schedule. And he was incapable of doing that. Now, so was Dylan Gabriel, who was a Heisman finalist. So I'm not going to kill him on that, but I'll say C minus.
All right, Caleb.
I'm on your train of C minus too. You know, when I first watched the game, I thought, oh, he has no help. He's tough as nails. He was trying to make plays. And then I went back and rewatched it. You realize how many times he got uncomfortable in the pocket when his first read wasn't there. And it very much reminds me of, those NFL quarterbacks that people used to say this about Aaron Rodgers, like, oh, he's so great. He just gets sacked all the time. But then he goes to the Jets and you realize, oh, he was getting sacked all the time because he was holding on to the ball, trying to make a play when he should have just gotten rid of it. That's Aaron Rodgers' whole career. And that felt like Nico right there in that Ohio State game where he was pressured. A lot of the times he was pressured because of where he stepped in the pocket, not because of the protection.
Final grade, guys. I mean, again, it's an average column. It's a C. I mean, I can't go anywhere else.
I'm at C minus for a final grade. I think he was below average as a whole for the year. He was below average, and this was he was average in the SEC this year, and one of the worst years for quarterback we've seen in the SEC in probably the last decade. So that's why I'll say he was a C minus.
So I wanted to ask you, Will, on this topic though, like, how concerned should Tennessee be about Nico Iamaleava? Because look, I said he was created in a lab to run Josh Heupel's offense when I watched some highlights of him, and I thought it was like Urban Meyer landing Tim Tebow to run his spread offense. And I was so dead wrong on that. I mean, should they be concerned to a level that George McIntyre could push for a starting job this year?
I don't think so. I think it's fine. I just think that, again, I would rethink the idea of I'm going to pay this quarterback $2-3 million to come be a freshman on my roster, and so by the time he's good, I'm $5 million into paying him money to not be good. I don't know that I would do that if I was a head coach moving forward from now on, and I think none of us knew that, and we're seeing Nico, Arch, Jackson Arnold, everybody from that class, Drew Aller last night. How'd that go? I think that I don't think it's that bad. And we all see what the potential is for Nico. How quickly can you unlock it? His ability to throw the ball to the outside, his decision to throw the ball to the outside first, middle, second. How much is that? When is that going to come into play? How quickly can you unlock him? I don't think there's any reason to freak out about this. But I do think he was what he was last year, which was a slightly below average SEC quarterback for the season. And he's got to get better, especially if you're going to pay him that kind of money. That's why I said I would have let him walk. And he's a great kid, and I know his teammates love him and his teammates respect him. And again, I don't think he had a part to do with any of this give me more money stuff. I think that he kind of got pushed into it, but that doesn't mean that I can't win more games with somebody else. Let me ask you this. This is the question we had with my Tyler Ivins, my co-host, he is a gambling guy, so he watches a lot of college football. Kid at Appalachian State last year, Brendan Sorsby, Nico. Who does Tennessee win more games with? Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati. Both of those other two guys were better than Nico, right? They were it's not a matter of what Nico's ceiling is. His ceiling's higher than all those dudes. But you'd have won more this year if you'd have had those guys.
Wow.
One more.
Go ahead. Sorry. I mean, Will didn't have anything to do.
I actually don't really. It's no.
No, I have to just point this out because one thing I'm coming to is Heupel's talent evaluation, because you're right, he opened $2 million for Nico. Before that, he thought Joe Milton was a better quarterback than Hendon Hooker. And guys, we can go back through history. Josh Heupel's best year at UCF was with the guy Scott Frost brought in. The only quarterback he ever identified that turned out to be good in college was Dylan Gabriel. We got to point that out.
Hendon Hooker was I mean, I know who I'll say it. Kevin Simons, the one that told Jeremy Pruitt to bring in Hendon Hooker. He went and scouted him in the Virginia Tech Wake Forest game and said, go get this guy. And so he got that. But I would also say, I think, you know how when you're really good at something, you can think you're better at it than you really are? So
oh, yes, I do.
Yeah. So I think Josh Heupel's really good at developing quarterbacks. And I think that if you're as good of a player and coach as Heupel has been, then sometimes maybe you think I can develop anybody who has the physical tools and is smart, I can develop them into a quarterback.
Yeah. Well, that's a mistake.
Well, I'm smart, but I don't have the physical tools. All right, Will, have a fantastic day. I don't know if you're going into the office because the snow's coming down, but you'll be online and on the air from 3 to 7. And you guys are killing it. Great show yesterday. I was in the car and heard a bunch of it, and it was really good Wednesday at about, I think, 4:15.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It usually is. Frankly, their ratings are through the roof.
That's when I was on. That's the boost. All right, buddy. Love you more than you know. I will see you Sunday.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, he's Will West. We's Will. I'm Dave. Caleb Calhoun, the show representative.
What good is a hooker without the physical tools? Like, come on, Dave.
I'm a different set of tools. Maybe I got the show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Banks and Jones. Do you need a reference? 2 minutes, and then coming back, we will dive into the stat of the day. Also, the Lady Vols, our last look brought to you by Drs. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Fall to LSU. And I might rehash a little bit that Nico stuff because I will tell you something that is a little bit befuddling. Also, college football playoff. I think Tennessee could have beaten either one of those teams that we saw last night. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. It is banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
This day in Tennessee sports history, we got stat of the day coming up. Help me.
Stat of the day. We already did.
I thought we did. Stat of the day now is coming up. But I want to put a poll question out there. Because I had it from a good source, but not a great source. Basically, everything that Will said. And I was going to continue to run it down and have it ready for the show on Monday. And I'm glad he went ahead and got it out there. That Nico's dad is a problem. Okay.
Let's before you put the poll out, let's get the results of the current poll because we never did.
Okay. Hang tight.
Okay.
Nico's dad is a problem. And I've been told that he is he's been a negative influence on some prospects visiting after games. I've been told he's a negative vibe just around the program. And that's troublesome. So give me the results of our poll question, and then I want to reset it to something that has to do with Nico's father.
And I want to, when you dive into that, I want to tell you a story that it reminds me of too, because it's not a story you're going to like if you're a Tennessee fan. But this poll question is: how should Vol fans and other SEC rivals react to Georgia quarterback Carson Beck transferring? Celebrate Georgia's imploding is 64%. Fear Kirby's getting serious is 36%. Sorry, it's fear. Kirby's getting serious. It's not celebrate.
So what were the finals? What were the
64% think it means Georgia is imploding. 36% thinks it means they're getting serious.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I don't feel confident about it, but I do think he's resetting. But the question is he resetting in the right way? Is he going to be like Paul Bear Bryant, who went to the Wishbone, went in 71? Or is he going to be like Lane Kiffin getting hired by Nick Saban? I mean, I don't.
I mean, I guess you could say, given it's Georgia, is he putting somebody else in the driver's seat? Sorry.
I mean, you could definitely hire the wrong guy. So I think I would probably lean more towards imploding, although I think I would have to lean more towards imploding, but it wouldn't surprise me if this makes them a better football program. Stat of the day is what?
It's a sad one, but it's kind of one that's kind of intriguing since Mike Keith has now gotten hired, which is this. Bob Kessling will go down as the only radio host in Tennessee history whose last year did not see Tennessee claim a national title. Lindsey Nelson's last year was 51. They won it. The broadcast right before John Ward, his last year was 67. Tennessee claims the national title in 67. They shouldn't, but they do. So, and then John Ward's last year was 1998.
It's mean. Sports Treasure.
Not Bob Kessling's fault. It's like
Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. Just go to Facebook and follow on sportstreasurestn.com, sportstreasurestn.com. You know what a stand-up is because you did TV, right?
Yes, I know what a stand-up is. I had to when I tried to go into local news broadcasting. I still have a resume reel somewhere of me doing stand-ups when I'm 20. You would probably love it.
Will you describe it? I mean, what a stand-up is for those that don't know.
It's the part of a broadcast package where the reporter is on camera saying something.
Right. So usually like if it's sports, it's like a court or field behind them.
Yeah, and you try to get a cool little scene behind you. Yeah.
So something odd about Bob Kessling during his stand-ups, he used to always shake his butt while he's doing it.
What were you looking at, Dave?
I just noticed I was waiting. I was in line for an interview, and after about 4 or 5 times, and I will say that somebody at one point recorded him and made a video that was to shaking that shaking that
Within like 3 months, this show has talked about Peyton Manning's feet and Bob Kessling's butt. Okay, so what's next?
We got problems. All right, there we go. The program brought to you in part by our friends at the UPS store in Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link right down below. They will help you out. All right. I watched the semifinal between Penn State and Notre Dame. I came away from that game thinking that Tennessee would beat both of those teams. Just a lot of lateral movement. I mean, they're not even getting downhill like you think of the traditional Big Ten teams. You think of hitting A and B gap, right? There was a lot of misdirection and stuff. And I'm not even talking about what Tennessee might do on the offensive side, but on the defensive side, as long as they stay home, I think Tennessee beats both those teams easily. Am I insane?
Well, I'm going to say could. I'm not going to say would because we're talking about a Notre Dame team that did beat Georgia. We have to be fair on that.
That played an extra game.
Notre Dame played an extra game, not Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had a week off.
Georgia had to deal with having a week off.
Yes. Just based
and by the way, didn't just beat Georgia, manhandled them.
Okay.
Like
you go ahead and tell me what you think. And then I've got my gambling expert out in Vegas. I'm going to text him and I'm going to say, what would the spread have been against those two teams? And hopefully I'll get an answer.
I'm going to tell you this right now, that the college football playoff path was much more about the path than it was the better teams. And we're seeing that very clearly.
You got to get it. You got to be done with the buys, don't you?
All 4 teams with buys lost, but that 3 of the teams that had buys were underdogs. That's the crazy part. I don't know. But if you're doing with the buys, you go to 16 teams. I hate the idea of a 16-team playoff. Like, why not let's just not have a regular season? Like, you guys just want to throw out the regular season. But like,
you guys,
everybody who wants a 16-team playoff that is going to get 8, 9, and 3 teams.
We don't know if those guys are listening. I mean, what are you trying to tell me here?
How do you have to add teams if you're going to get rid of? You have to add or subtract teams if you're going to get rid of the bye, and they're not going to subtract teams. You have to either go to 8 or 16. And so
they should have gone at 8. I mean, that was the number, and they messed.
8 was the magic number. 8 was absolutely the magic number. I agree with you on that.
Because I will tell you that I think the top 8 teams could have legitimately won a championship. I'm not sure that 9 to 12 could have. As a matter of fact, I don't think they could have.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And here's the other thing. If you want to do the buys, which I don't like, fine. But don't do the buys tied to the winning the conference. In other words,
just take the top 4.
Yeah, just the top 4 as you want to seed them.
No, there's another layer you have to. There's something else to do.
Think about how silly that is. If you won the SEC championship in basketball or the regular season, then you automatically get a 1 seed in the NCAA.
There's another.
Excuse me. That is absolutely stupid.
There's another layer to this. It's not about the buys. If you're the higher seed, if you earn a bye, you should get a home game. Like, I'm sorry, Georgia should have gotten to play, like, maybe not Notre Dame, but like Texas should have gotten to play it. Not Texas, sorry, they were on the road too. They didn't get a bye. Arizona State should have gotten to play at home, or whoever. Oregon should have gotten to play Ohio State at home. Oregon should have gotten to play Ohio State at home. You should be allowed. You should get home games. That's why you play for the bye in the NFL, Dave. You know this in the NFL playoffs. You're not really playing for the bye. You're playing to play in your stadium, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're playing for. The bye is like an extra like cherry on top, but you have to win an extra game to do it. I'm breaking from you from last night. I don't know. Did I watch a different game? I thought that was like really good, like defensive football last night. Am I crazy?
Well, it was a terrible quarterback mistake that decided it. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. I tend to think that was more poor offensive play than great defensive play.
Yeah, but college football
championship game.
College football all year has looked like poor offensive play, though, hasn't it? So are we sure we're not are we sure we're seeing, and maybe this goes back to the Nico question. Are we watching mediocre quarterback play this year and thinking, maybe it's just defenses, maybe it's just the game has changed and defenses have adjusted to the elite quarterback play? Because Dave, who are the 2 Heisman finalists this year? Who was top 2?
Well, I mean, on my ballot or
no, in general, who were the top 2?
You tell me.
Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. When's the last time a quarterback wasn't in the top 2 of a Heisman finalist? Not just not winning the Heisman, not in the top 2.
I don't know. I think anybody that voted for Travis Hunter over Shadur Sanders is stupid.
Well, the point I'm making is quarterback play was down across college football this year. And so I'm starting to wonder, and maybe this is why I'm giving Nico a break. Like, look, Jackson Arnold underachieved at Oklahoma. We had so many SEC quarterbacks we saw underachieve. Are we sure that SEC defenses, not SEC, college football defenses in general, haven't just caught up to this day and age in football, and they are equipped to stop the passing attack like they never have been before?
Perhaps. Derek agrees with me wholeheartedly. Said I couldn't agree less. Yeah, I mean, maybe I saw something different, but if you can't go out, if either of those teams played Tennessee in that first half like they played, Tennessee has the lead going into half, and when they have the lead, their defense plays more free. Again, maybe there have been times this season because of the competition and the variance between a great team and a good team and a bad team and an average team. There have been times where it's really tough to assess because college football is too wide of a spectrum. The worst team in college football can never beat the best team in college football. That's not true in the NFL. Crazy things can happen. It's exactly. A little bit closer. That's why I think you need to lop off the 2/3 of the bottom of Division I and make the super conference. Because right now, we're half the games aren't even competitive that you want.
Yeah, but okay, if we're talking about Tennessee last night, Dave, are you telling me you think Nico, we just talked about it, do you think Nico would have performed any better than Riley Leonard or Drew Aller, given what he did this year in big moments? Maybe Drew Aller, because Aller was awful. But
yeah.
But, Penn State came away with 5 sacks. How many times do you think Nico's getting sacked?
Well,
17?
He was sacked 4 times against Ohio State. So, yeah, maybe the pressure would have been too much. But, again, we've got to stop saying the word. Can we make a resolution? We are not going to say the words talent and Nico anymore. Okay? Because, listen, when it comes to talent, Jamarcus Russell has a ton of talent. Joe Milton has a ton of talent. And I'm not comparing him to the other guys, or those guys, or Nico to those guys. But it is time that we say to ourselves, Nico has talent. Great. But that doesn't mean anything. I mean, ultimately, you've got to go out there and perform, and he wasn't ready at the beginning of the year. Now, I'll say this. I think he played better, and he showed his toughness late. And I still would say in our poll question that Tennessee would have beaten both of those teams. You can vote. Notre Dame, Penn State, both or neither is our poll question, and that is up now. You would say what? And it's brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage with 2 T's. Chatmortgagewith2T's.com. Which direction would you go, Caleb?
Tennessee could have or would have. There's a difference.
Would. And it is Bank on It. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
All right, Caleb. What say you? Would have beaten Penn State, Notre Dame, both neither.
Would have beaten Penn State, wouldn't have beaten Notre Dame. I'm sorry, they wouldn't have. I think that and it would have come down to quarterback. I think Riley Leonard would have outperformed Nico by 1,000 light years, honestly. Say what you want about Riley Leonard. He showed some moxie at the end of that game. And also, and I'm being questionable with that too, because Penn State had 5 sacks. So how many times would they have sacked Nico? I'm only saying they would have beaten Penn State because Penn State finds a way to choke big games, and James Franklin just screws it up all the time.
Do you ever get to the point where you're so down on somebody that like everything they do, you just kind of nitpick? Because I'm that way with Marcus Freeman. I've made up my mind, and maybe I'll back off of it if he continues to have success and wins a championship. But like I get up from the couch and I'm watching that game, and I'm going to the restroom. And I hear him, they ask about the quarterback situation and the injury, and said, well, we might not have as many quarterback runs. And I just thought to myself, why would you say that? Because I will tell you right now, there is somebody at Georgia, there is somebody at Alabama, there's somebody that they watch every single second of stuff that's broadcast about Tennessee. And I guarantee you, even though it was during the game, somebody was watching television and got a message to Penn State at halftime that he just said that. I promise you. I've talked to Cooper about this, that Tennessee has an army of people that watch all the content, especially when it has players on it from other teams.
Well, Marcus Freeman also almost made my football IQ. Because would have made it because
saying what you're going to do in the second half and not do that should make it.
Well, that wasn't even it. Like that wasn't even the worst. So did you remember when Notre Dame got the first down that effectively set up their game-winning field goal, and then they spiked the ball right after that?
Yes.
Why are you spiking the ball? You want to make you like, why are you spiking the ball? You want to run the clock, take a knee, like anything.
It's just
like
it's so bizarre to me how the clock management thing, does that not seem like the most simple thing?
And coaches get it wrong all the time.
Well, I know, and I understand that there's a lot going on. I get it. Okay.
But they should just hire somebody.
Yeah.
Hire an analyst to be like, hire an analyst. What was it that was written back in the day that Butch Jones was like, why didn't Butch Jones just hire a common sense person to say? And by the way, and I want to last part, and then at the end of that game, I almost wanted to put him, because did you notice Notre Dame's defense? They were having 3 guys in spy on Penn State's like desperation drive. Why do you have guys in spy when you need to prevent defense? That's the stupidest thing. Drew Aller's not going to run for a touchdown.
Talk Some Lady Balls brought to you by Work Trucks, all about trucks. Your thoughts on the Lady Balls as they fall to LSU. Fortunately, no berth during the game, so everything's good.
Tennessee lost to LSU off a last-second shot. It was 89-87. And I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to go to something Kim Caldwell said on this on the front end. But first, I have to say, the disturbing thing for Tennessee, a lot of people are excited because they're saying, oh, they played undefeated LSU close. Okay, I'm going to go Mike Leach, old school Mike Leach real quick, which is when he said, F playing them close. We lost the GD game and we could have won the MFer. Okay. He
Mike Leach said that?
He said that too. There's a famous Mike Leach rant against Texas Tech after they barely beat Baylor one year, and he just cusses out all his players. He was fired like within a month of that. But it was after a win. But anyways, yeah. So the reason I think I'm a little upset with Tennessee in this game is they did what they needed to do to win. They shot 11 of 31 from 3. LSU was 1 of 8. The reason they lost is LSU won the rebounding battle 46-38. LSU got 16 offensive rebounds to Tennessee's 15. Tennessee has more size and athleticism. They actually should have out-rebounded LSU. They should have torched them on the boards. And you know who agrees with me, guys? Who agrees with me? It's Kim Caldwell, because she was asked about it, and she said, quote, our players have to want to rebound. And then Kim Caldwell said this. Can I show you what she said real quick for everybody?
Yeah, I love that line, want to rebound, by the way.
Yeah, I love it too. And then she decided for everybody like, oh, they played LSU close and they're building a program. And this is what Kim Caldwell said.
Caleb, that's 3 voices in one segment. We've got to have a 2-voice limit. One is your own. 2-voice limit, because goodness gracious, it's been a long week. All right. So what did Kim Caldwell have to say?
Let's pull this up real quick, because here is what she said right now.
I think for me personally, I get a little bit offended with you have time to rebuild. You have time to rebuild. These seniors aren't your players. That offends me. They are my players. They chose to stay.
Wow.
I love that.
That's like Pat Summitt stuff.
It is. I love that. You know who else used to say that, by the way? To his credit, is Urban Meyer actually used to say that. He used to say, those are your players when you take over. Now it's easy to say that when you take over a Florida team that Ron Zook left you 3 years worth of recruits. So, but yeah, I love Kim Caldwell saying that. Kim Caldwell wants to, and by the way,
it's so easy to come out after a game. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's so easy to come out after a game and say, we've just got to continue to grow as a program. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. Instead, she's saying lost, and that's not acceptable. That's, you know what that is? That's the anti-Butch Jones. That's exactly what Butch Jones would not have said.
Oh, no, he would not have said that at all.
He would have broken down the entire roster and the deficiencies therein.
Yes, and then said we're playing the toughest schedule in history, because he said that one year. He said we're playing the toughest schedule in college football history. Which, by the way, the data tracked it was not the toughest schedule in college football history. So, yes, I agree. And Kim Caldwell, and you have to love her for this. And by the way, this is why Danny White hired her. One of the things Danny White goes for, we can question if he hires championship coaches or not, because he still hasn't hired a coach to win a championship. But one thing he hires right on, he hires coaches who make an early splash. And he's very big on, I want you to win early, because I know if you win early, the fan interest will follow, and then the recruiting will follow. And also, in this day and age at NIL, the fan interest helps with recruiting, because that's more money. And so he hired Kim Caldwell with the expectation that she was going to be successful this year. And look, I didn't think she was going to be this successful, but I love the way she said it. And she's right, because Tennessee the Oklahoma game, they just have to work on half-court defense. That's kind of something that she's got to work on with first-year head coach. In this situation with Kim Caldwell, they lost because of effort. That was an effort issue last night, and that's something you don't want to see. And that's why she said our players have to want to rebound, honestly. And major credit to her for saying that.
All right, let's rank Tennessee's coaches. So Tony Vitello's number 1 in the 4 major sports. How would you rank Rick Barnes, Kim Caldwell, and Josh Heupel? Who's 2, 3, and 4?
It's Tony Vitello, Rick Barnes, Kim Caldwell, Josh Heupel. In that order.
Heupel's the worst of the 4 major coaches at Tennessee?
He's the least accomplished. By far.
Okay. Least accomplished. Yeah, I'll give you that. Well, no, he says accomplished. No, he had an undefeated season. You got to put him 3rd above Caldwell. You have to.
Caldwell's got a national championship at a lower level, yes, but she's got a national championship at a Division II level.
I will take the undefeated at Central Florida over that. Would you
Heupel took over. That team was undefeated the year before.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what did he finish that year?
No. He went undefeated. You're right, but he inherited a team that went undefeated. He just went undefeated again.
David says Vitello, Barnes, Heupel, and Caldwell right now. Yeah, I would go Heupel third. The poll question: Vols would have beaten Notre Dame, Penn State, both or neither. Neither. 44%. Both 38%. Penn State 12%. Notre Dame 6%. Now, when we're having this conversation in 5 years, chances are Rick Barnes would be 75. He's not on this list. So let's just take the 3 right now. One of the coaches would have to win a national championship at the highest level to be above Tony Vitello. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen after what I saw last year.
Tony Vitello is the best coach in college baseball.
Yeah. Maybe
he's number one.
Maybe Kim Caldwell can win a national championship, but I now have real concerns about Josh Heupel. So do you foresee that ranking changing in the next 5 years?
I do foresee Heupel. I mean, I do foresee Caldwell staying above Heupel or moving above Heupel. I think that there is there were some concerns about Heupel that were not there for me 2 years ago.
Now, 6 months ago.
Yeah, 6 months ago. Now I'll say this. Kim Caldwell is also a system coach. What's the flaw with the system coach? Always, any system coach, and I always tell you guys this, a system coach can be great their first 3 years on the job. But what do they do when people adjust? For instance, Bruce Pearl, whatever you think of him, adjusted once SEC defense is called up with that flex offense and that press, right? He did adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Spurrier adjusted when people called up with the fun and gun. Fun and gun wasn't a system. I got to stop saying that. It wasn't really a system, but he did adjust and throw less. Urban Meyer has adjusted his spread consistently through the years. That's why he won 3 national titles at 2 different schools. Josh Heupel has not adjusted at all to defenses adjusting to him.
Whoa. That's not accurate. The 12 personnel wasn't a thing before last year.
I thought Alex Golich did that sometimes.
No.
And by the way, even though the 12 personnel,
goal line, but
the 12 personnel may have been used more common, but it didn't seem like the concepts were any different. He didn't change up the route concepts or anything like that. He just put in an extra blocker. I don't think that's much of an adjustment. And so that's going to be the question with Kim Caldwell, because I'll tell you this. When Kim Caldwell gets her elite players, is she going to be able to adjust to maybe slow the game down? Because when you have more talent in basketball, you want to slow the game down because you want your talent to win out in the half-court sets.
I'm giving Josh Heupel a lot more credit. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, I think he's above Rick Barnes. I know he's not as accomplished, but let's change up the question. If you were to hire one of these 3 coaches and you're an athletic director, forget about the revenue part of it or that football is the bigger sport. And let's say they all make the same amount of money and you hire them from the get. They're 28 years old, 35 years old, whatever. I'm hiring Josh Heupel first, Kim Caldwell second, and Rick Barnes third, because Rick Barnes isn't going to get me to a Final Four.
Well, Rick Barnes has gotten to a Final Four.
One in 500 years, he's Methuselah. I mean, good gravy. I mean, one for that amount of coaching is analogous to like 0 with 20 years of coaching. I mean, good gracious, you're going to stumble into something every once in a while.
What makes you believe in Josh Heupel more than Kim Caldwell?
The 12 personnel. Actually, that adjustment, which you're not giving him any credit for some reason, that is absolutely, to me, the difference. Last Look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Ott.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at CCT.
All right,
let me throw back.
Yep, throw back, push back.
You throw the 12 personnel. I'm going to throw Kim Caldwell's roster building. I questioned every move she was making in the transfer portal this offseason because I kept saying, you're going for size and athleticism, but your system needs 3-point shooting. All these players are shooting like way better from 3 this year than they were last year. She saw something I didn't on how they could be good from 3. You even have to question Josh Heupel's roster building at this point, right? His roster management leaves a lot to be desired. And that's something Kim Caldwell and Rick Barnes do very well.
Yep. Okay. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. There is some snow in Knoxville, so if you're in East Tennessee or anywhere else, be extra safe. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. I'm going to have some fun in the snow because I've got an all-wheel drive Audi that's already wrecked. So, I mean, really, what could happen? The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney,